moistly. Speaking moistly. Keep 2 meters apart. Speaking moistly.
Hello and welcome to Speaking Moistly, our last episode of 2020. Oh my goodness, I'm ready for 2020 to be done. And with me as usual is Greg. How you doing today, Greg?
I'm doing fantastic. It's sunny here.
Beautiful.
Had a peaceful Christmas. So
Nice.
yeah, last one of the year. Let's do it.
Indeed. Yeah, Christmas was good. The kids had a lot of fun. We got easy roller things. Easy, I don't know, and they've been rolling around our kitchen for a couple of days. They're supposed to be outside toys. Oh well.
Well, at least they're staying active, right? As long as they're moving around, I support it.
Indeed, it's been fun. I mean, we have the room in the kitchen for them to do that. So, as much as it's it's loud sometimes, but that's all right. Anyway, Gerald Butts. I know I don't usually read tweets by Gerald Butts, but he's right in line. He says, "This is absolutely gobsmacking. Are we really not vaccinating people in Ontario because of the holidays?" And David Carr says, "No vaccinations on the weekend or holidays. No need to update your vaccine data until the 30th. Early closures of vaccine clinics on December 24th, with reopening on the 29th. Yeah, that's today." Not sure how that. Now is the time to take 4.5 days off. I called my local health office because they blocked me on Twitter, and I just wanted to know like what I did and how they can block a citizen in their health unit from Twitter, which I think is weird. I just want them to tell me why. And
Right.
I got the message saying like, yeah, we'll have emergency medical stuff available, which I guess would be at the emergency room, but otherwise we're closed until January 3rd. And I thought, what? Yeah, is there a pandemic, or it's time to take a paid vacation? This is a great time for a paid vacation. Like,
Well, what I find so frustrating about this tweet is, I mean, once again, I've talked about this months and months and months ago as this whole lockdown thing happened. They weren't so proactive when it came to the lockdown. You know, there was a lot of stuff coming out about this virus, like early on, December, January, February. Weren't too proactive about that. The messaging was completely different about the virus. But the second that the virus and the lockdown happened, it's like, let's get that vaccine. Let's roll with the vaccine the quick as possible. Let's be quick. Let's go, 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 go. So I find it very frustrating that it's like, oh, I can't believe, COVID is not a holiday. And it's like, yeah. And like being concerned about a pandemic before it spreads, like you shouldn't be, you know what I mean? Comparing it to exactly what was happening a year ago when we were first finding out about this virus, they certainly treated it like a holiday. They treated it like it was not a big deal whatsoever. They treated it like we shouldn't do anything. We shouldn't close any borders. We shouldn't do any of this.
yeah, well, even, and more than that, they even shamed people for saying, like, do you believe China? Do you believe the numbers? Shouldn't we close flights from China? And then instead of closing flights from China, they didn't. They're still open to this day, but they're closing flights from the United Kingdom. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah, very odd.
And even now with like the narrative they're pushing of like, oh, there's a variation in the virus or whatever.
Yeah.
And, like we all need to stay on lockdown. It's like the airports are open. The
Yeah.
airports are open. Like that's gobsmacking.
Yep.
Like, with this narrative being perpetrated, it doesn't even make any sense.
It doesn't. It doesn't make sense.
No, it's nothing new now. The insanity is nothing new, I suppose, with
Well-
all the different messaging we receive on a daily basis.
I think it's meant to purposely confuse. I don't think that it's meant to be helpful, put you at ease, to be calming at all. But
No.
here's AGL people. She says, well, she's responding to Patty Haydu, who said on the 27th, after investigation, these cases have been connected to a traveler from the UK. We all need to avoid non-essential travel and follow mandatory quarantine requirements. This is about the UK variant, and AGL is saying, how was the UK variant detected? What testing was done? I still don't know if we've reasonably isolated and identified the first COVID thing. And I understand we're using the genetic sequence that was put out by China early on to identify this, and we're using PCR tests to upcycle pieces of our genetic code to see if the virus has been inside of us. But how did they decide this is a new variant that's worth talking about? Only 344 people have died outside of under 60 and outside of like long-term care, comorbidities, all that other stuff. So it just seems wild that they're pushing this new variant now. Very convenient timing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that once again, it kind of started with climate change, but it's amped up with this COVID stuff where a lot of people who might not be experts are being both authorities and kind of giving their takes on, well, this is the science. And like this science conversation has been politicized, which is obviously a huge red flag.
Yep.
But you know, I'm at the point, and you might be at the same point, where it's like kind of expecting there to be like a fair and honest, open conversation about the science. It's like, I'm not getting my hopes up for that anytime soon. So anytime I hear something about like, oh, well, this is the update and this is the new variant, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, why do I feel like I'm going to look into this story and find no actual science to like dig my teeth into? Or it's going to be disputed by some other expert or scientist who will then be canceled or smeared for disagreeing. You know, it's the same thing over again.
Well,
like this is like Groundhog Day. I've seen this before.
Yeah. Well, the most recent lockdown that Doug Ford implemented on the 26th, what data was presented for that, right? Like, oh, my friends, we just came out of a 28-day lockdown in Toronto, and it's supposed to be lifted on Monday, and looks like we're not lifting it. Ha 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 ha! Right? If you're a small business, right? Like,
it feels more and more just like them crafting the perfect kind of media pacing or news media kind of, and I don't know how long they've been this good at it for, but you know how they justified the lockdown on the 26th? All this news that came days before that was, oh, Doug Ford's talking to like the directors of the hospitals in Toronto. Ooh, okay, he's talking to the experts. Like, I'm just going to assume that they have all the important conversations and that they're working hard for us.
Yep.
And then they just come out and say, based on our conversations, which I won't go into any detail of the science or anything, we're locking down. Yeah. Remember, I had the conversations with the doctors. Ha ha, ha ha. And once again, it's like, you know, go F yourself if you want to know any of the details of how we're justifying this. We just are.
Okay? Yeah. Well, I was telling you before in the green room, before we started the show, that my video 451 on Canada Poly got removed from my private, like my personal YouTube channel, because they said it violated the YouTube terms of service. But it's interestingly still up on on Canada Poly. So that's weird. So they're trying to, I ask the same questions. Where is the science? Where's the data to back this up? I talked about the Wuhan study that has the 10,000 or 10 million people studied, and their asymptomatic spread was zero. Like, not like 1 or 2, like 0. And also there are other data points, other researchers saying asymptomatic spread is non-existent. And if that's true, there's no reason for masks and no reason for lockdowns. Why, if you were in charge, if I was in charge, I would be replicating the Wuhan study, taking the healthy people who tested positive in Canada and don't have any symptoms, and testing all of their close contacts to find out if any of them are sick. And if there's none of them that are sick, then we have a reasonable study of 10 million and another reasonable couple of like, if you have a university in your town, there's no reason not to do this. In fact, you would have every reason to do this to protect your businesses, right? Like, you wouldn't start a fire in your living room, right? Like, you just wouldn't do that. You wouldn't destroy your economy on purpose. It doesn't make any sense. But anybody asking for any of this stuff, anybody saying, here's data that would be helpful. How about just even telling us how many people are healthy and positive, right? If we have 60 people positive testing and 4 of them are sick, that's a really different thing than 60 people testing and 55 of them are sick. There's a huge difference there, right? Like, we need to have this information, and they're not interested in giving it to us. They don't want, in fact, even talking about this may get this whole broadcast silenced.
Is that right?
Maybe, possibly. Wow. Who knows? I hope that's not true. I hope it stays up, but today's experience is such that maybe not, right? So I'll repost it if it goes down.
I just find the whole thing so baffling, because, you know, for people like you and me, like we look at this stuff, we question it, we point out the lack of thoroughness, the lack of kind of detail that's presented, and for people who aren't kind of looking into it, I don't understand how they can trust the experts, and then the experts get it wrong so many times, time and time again. And like, just like this whole idea, like the whole idea of science has been perverted. And it's just like so disturbing that how so many people are just kind of buying it wholesale. And it's like, don't you remember, like, science is questioning things. Mm-hmm. Science is challenging things. Like, that's the whole idea of science, to test and retest. Like, why are you coming at me with this like dogmatic approach to science? And like, how is this so widespread? And it's just, it scares me because I don't know. Along with, like you said, people like this information, the way that's presented in the news isn't helping people.
No,
it's
just
definitely
confusing.
not making people any smarter
No.
or helping with their critical thinking skills. If anything, it discourages it entirely.
Yeah. Well, and I I was gonna mention, I was gonna jump in, but I didn't want to interrupt you. But now I've lost what I was gonna say. Oh well.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. It's my fault. The fact that it is so confusing, the fact that it is so purposely kind of jumbled. Doug Ford, not that he doesn't want to give the data, but I don't know if he wants to give the data. I don't think that he does. But when they come out and when they do these announcements, when they talk about this stuff, the data in the news reports, as you were saying, the data even given in the press conferences, in the questions and all that stuff, it's nowhere near robust enough to qualify for justifying the things that they're doing. But here we are, right? And what's the way to fight back? The courts don't seem to be. It doesn't seem to be very effective at this point. What's happening with Rocco's case? Do you know anything about what's going on with Rocco's case?
Rocco's case, no, I'm not aware of that.
Rocco Galati, he was suing on behalf of Vaccine Choice Canada, I think, with regard to mandatory masks, but now that's ballooned into everything else, right? So because they just don't care. They just dismiss the lawsuits. They just dismiss it. There was one saying you're abusing, not abusing the court. Yeah, I think maybe abusing the court. Another one that I saw, they said we're going to not look at the constitutionality. Like, we'll set the constitutionality of this aside. We're just going to look at if you did this thing or not that's against the rules. And it's like, the whole point was to look at the constitutionality. It's frustrating.
Wow.
Yeah, it's frustrating. So I don't know what the recourse is, but without recourse, people are going to be upset. One of the things that I thought was funny. Moving on, we can move on because I thought I was going to find my train of thought, and because it seemed like a good thing to say, but I can't remember what it is now. So we'll move on. When they started announcing the generals at the federal level, it was all sorts of excitement. The general's going to do this. We're going to knock it out of the park. Military precision, right? The federal general, all the provinces have generals, or a bunch of generals. Alberta and Ontario do anyway. Maybe Nova Scotia does, but I'm not sure about Nova Scotia. Not come to think of it. But here's the first general, and he says, I take responsibility for that, and clearly we got it wrong. This is on pausing the vaccinations over the holidays. And we kind of went off on a tangent, but I just wanted to kind of point and laugh and say, like, all of this planning, all of this stuff, and we got 90,000 doses, and we've only put in 11,000 because they wanted to go on holidays. Yeah, I don't know, just annoying. Anyway,
It's bureaucracy, man. It's bureaucracy. Once again, why? Since when does so much of the Canadian public say, "Yeah, I'm going to trust the same people that run Service Ontario and put all of my faith in them"? You know, it's like,
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. It seems like they're tooting their own horns for a very small, like, if you ask a question, they pivot. Oh, I've got you up on the screen instead of me. If you ask a question and they pivot to their talking point, right? And pretend that everybody has to pretend that that's the answer to the question. And sometimes the reporter will push back and say, so are you standing up to China? And then Trudeau walks away. Or every so often somebody will push back and say, well, what about this aspect of things? And then, the politician will get upset, and then that reporter will get blacklisted somehow. Look at the Rebel News, right? So when we're in that kind of situation, what do? You're just in a pressure cooker. And the people who are setting this all up, who are consistently using the media to tell us that they're doing it for our health, are doing everything they can to shut down any avenue to get more information, to get, this is it. What is even the goal of the lockdown? Yeah. What are we trying to do? How can we measure this? It's not measurable. That's the thing that I was going to talk about earlier. I feel like it's been teasing it for 5 minutes. Yeah. What's the goal of the lockdown? Do you even know what the goal of the lockdown is? Like, what is a success after 28 days?
Well, it was flatten the curve, and now it's prevent any new infection entirely. It's like
COVID-0.
Completely different. That's completely different, bro. Yeah. And of course, we're talking like over half a year ago now. But just to kind of touch on the vaccines in this kind of story here,
yep.
I once again I feel like it's a sort of like media drip, the news drip that they're feeding us, where it's like, oh man, they took a break on the vaccines. That's horrible. That is shameful.
Mm-hmm.
That they would not be in vaccinating people as quickly as possible.
Yep.
You know, and you know, we've already seen the tiptoe of like not getting a vaccine is selfish. If ever, like, you know, like all this talk. So it's really kind of more of that, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's sad to see, because I've talked to a lot of my normie friends, and like, you know, slowly but surely they start to think of, oh, I guess maybe I will get the vaccine. Oh, you know, like it starts to go in that direction.
I've had people say to me, well, if we could travel, you know, if we could travel again, if we go back to life as normal, then maybe it's
Yeah,
worth it.
no, I said it once before in the show, but it's like I don't know much about the psychology of like breaking in a slave, because I'm not into that sort of stuff. But it's like there is a lot of psychology there, and people are in that desperate phase of like, just give me the vaccine, daddy, let me go outside. Like it's very much people are desperate, and it's definitely an abusive relationship we're in with whatever you want to call it, our public servants, or like our authority daddy figures. It's disgusting how much they disrespect us, don't really tell us what's going on, but they're like, you know, you rely on us, you love us, remember? You'd be nothing without me.
Yeah. I did hear Doug Ford say that the other day. My friends. Yeah, man, it's very so without any kind of clear goal for the lockdown, I fear that at the end of the lockdown, they're going to say, oh man, if only these cases were a little lower. If only we could if only you guys did it right, and you didn't get together for New Year's or something like that. Then, and then they're going to say, well, now that the kids are already in online school and the adults are all working from home, then, you know, we'll just lock down forever until there's absolutely nothing left. So the video that I sent you in the green room as well, and I brought it up earlier, she talks about, her name is Catherine Fitz, and she talks kind of about how the monetary aspect of how this is all working, and why she talks about disaster capitalism. I wrote it down because I thought I'm going to forget that and just butcher it. But yeah, disaster capitalism, where she looked into the Black Lives Matter riots and how they targeted a specific places in different cities, and how that maybe connects to some disaster capitalism with rolling, like Jeff Bezos's, the extra money that he made because Amazon's making lots of money, and the Walmart people, whoever the Walmart people are looking at vehicles to not launder their money, but to not pay taxes on their money. They can use certain vehicles that maybe the Black Lives Matter people help them vacate to have opportunity, right? And so maybe that's a little bit of disaster capitalism. But this video is totally worth a watch if you want it, because it bridges the gap between the monetary battle that's going on, and she introduces talking about the old system, which is a private cash money system that we currently live in, and the new system, which is cryptocurrency, and the fact that she thinks that they're using COVID-19 as a forceps to speed up the crypto, because if there's no problem with the old system, there's no reason for the new. Right. So they're using COVID-19 to exacerbate the problem with the old system, which is why we're spending all this money to then reset the system into a cryptography system that basically functions like China's social credit system, but even worse.
Huffington Post headline: why physical money is keeping COVID-19 alive. Something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. Oh, the push is right there. The push is already happening. Like that's what I mean. This is the bridge between that. They don't want to give this up because this is not about a virus. It's about money. It's about cash money and the value of a person. The value of a person to an owner is much, much more than the value of a citizen to a government. Right?
Yep.
You
absolutely.
See? So very scary stuff. And like, I wish I was if I was on the ball. I don't know if I could handle it. I don't know if I could.
Yeah. And that's the more sinister side of kind of like what's moving in the background that is, quite frankly, never really openly talked about. It's probably not even mentioned. It's just all about COVID when it comes to the stuff that's on TV or on the mainstream news. But I was just going to say, to comment like what we're kind of being distracted with. It's this kind of progressive ideal, and like most progressive ideals, they're kind of like, they should be written in crayon.
Yes.
And it's like this ideal of almost like being a control freak, perfectionism, no new infections, everyone is safe, everything is perfect. And like they're continually they're just kind of ramping that up.
Yep.
And you can apply it to anything.
Yep.
And of course, it's like, if you've ever met a perfectionist or somebody who's obsessed with this like black or white thinking, they're probably depressed, or they're like, they have like a mentally ill problem to be like obsessed with trying to control everything. And the fact that it's just kind of being projected onto the public through mass media, just like, wow, what a time we live in. If you're feeling concerned about the future, hey, it's an exciting time. So, like, strap in and get some popcorn and enjoy yourself, because it's going to be quite the show.
It will be. I not to beat this horse to death, but she does the video as well that I was talking about. She talks about how this is a cult, and they're using. She specifically with the Biden, like with the president-elect Biden stuff. She says they're asking their cult, the people who've bought in to the mainstream media, the people who've, on Facebook still, like if Facebook is part of your day, man, replace it with something else. Do something, learn French or something. But the Facebook group, she says they're asking their cult, the people who they're grooming to become their cult, to just pretend, go with this Biden guy, because the alternative is unthinkable, and only unthinkable to the people who are controlling the cult. The actual members of the cult would fare much better with the Trump presidency. But that's what, I mean, that's the level of brainwashing we're talking about. And it's incredible that the mainstream media is the one doing it, along with Twitter and Facebook and Reddit. All of these platforms are gaslighting in the same way. Universities, they're not right. They're just coordinated. And that doesn't mean they're right. Like, and there are people who are like, I don't know, man, there's lots of people saying, it's like, yeah, just because a lot of people jumped off the bridge doesn't mean you should too. It's a bad idea. Frustrating.
Yeah. And it's and it makes me just think about, normies and like apolitical people, and how far they are away from that sort of reality, right? Because they see these brands, they see these institutions, they see these bright production lights, and all these experts, and it's comfortable, it's comforting for them, and they kind of bask in it, and it gives them that blissful their reality is blissful, to think, oh, everything's figured out, the experts are taking care of me and everything's fine. And it is super difficult being red pilled, as they say, to kind of like come out of that place, to come into, hey, welcome to uncertain reality. Welcome to the real world where things are uncertain. Things aren't necessarily as they seem. And all you have to do is admit and say, hey, like these prestigious institutions that we trust so much, they have been wrong. Remember? They were wrong this time. Remember? So why were you putting so much trust in them to begin with on like everything? And you're right, it is this cult-like, unthinking faith. It's very similar to a religion, I would say, and you don't question it. Yep. And it's like, well, why don't you question it? It's like, well, it says in the book not to question it. You know? Well,
and especially if you're on the inside, especially if you are one of the people who are, the United Nations, I did on my show today, the United Nations released something in October talking about how the right way to roll out vaccines and getting high vaccine approval, right? And part of it is, like, do you have employers have the default is you get the vaccine and then you have to opt out, or is the default that you just don't get the vaccine and there's a window of time, like go down to the storage room between 10 and 2 and somebody will jab you there. Right? Like there's a difference between that. But then it gets into, is the vaccine mandatory for things like daycare and school? Like, and it's, they're training these people. So if you're in the game, if you're in this environment, and part of the document talks about influencers and how they should behave and what they should do to set a good example, because that's having influential people take part in the vaccination program is important, because it gets higher
here's
uptake.
my vaxxed selfie. Hey guys.
Yeah. Basically, amazing Polly calls those the what are they, the not the suicide, the hostage videos, right? Like,
yeah,
the police officer looking like, oh, this is a dubious thing. I don't really want.
What were you referring to there? Some PDF you said you read or something? What is it?
Yeah, there was in my show today. I came across a WHO publication that was talking about how to get high vaccination compliance, high vaccination uptake. I think they called it, and
Hmm.
like it seems like pretty okay advice to a policymaker. Like you'd read like
Right,
as
right.
somebody who's a union person, you get like instructions and it's like you should use this for these situations, like this is where this applies,
Sure,
just
sure.
to understand the thing, right? So if
Yeah.
you're like a policymaker, if you're like a citizen, a municipal or whatever, and you get this package from the WHO talking about how to roll out vaccines, you're going to take that seriously. You're in the game, right? Like anybody who's against the WHO is against your goals, right? So like,
Yeah, and it's your job. It's literally your
yeah,
job
more than that.
to
Yeah.
high compliance rate. Like, hey, you want
Yep.
your paycheck, then get a high compliance rate.
Yeah. Right. And
Everyone's just a cog in the machine.
it's exactly like the web designers or the app designers who, when the boss comes in and says, in Bejeweled this week we got 4 minutes engagement and like that's 68 ads and we'd really like to get 5.5 minutes of engagement. If you could squeeze some more time out of them, what do we have to do? Like what kind of candy
Yep.
do we have to give those brains to keep them there for a couple more minutes to get that
Yeah.
new right. And it's what, because that's your job. And so like you're on board with that. You're like, yeah man, we got to get vaccines in those arms, man, ASAP. And it doesn't matter Bell's palsy, it doesn't matter all the rest of it. They're just interested in fulfilling their job. And I mean, humans are hunting creatures, right? Like give us a target and we're gonna go do it. And we're gonna go
Absolutely,
do it.
absolutely. And just like normies versus people like us kind of live in different worlds because we consume different information, so we have a different perspective on things. Same when you work at an organization. When you work at a large organization, like your perspective on the world is completely different. Yet there's internal messaging. There's maybe there's like standards and morals and directives for where you work. And especially if you're going there every day and that's your livelihood, like you get
Yeah.
that becomes part of who you are. Really, it becomes part
Yeah.
of your identity and your existence. So it's
And
yeah,
how you view yourself, right? Like it's
yeah,
not just how other people view you and that it's in that context too, like the context of the community you're in or whatever. But
mhm.
you start to see yourself that way as you conform to the people's wishes, etc. It's so insidious. It's so insidious. A couple of anti-racist books and the whole society's gone.
McDonald is my family. Okay,
The government is your family. We love
Ronald
you.
Mc- Ronald McDonald raised me. Okay, these preservatives are good for the community.
The French fries at
Anyway,
McDonald's
anyway,
before 1995 were
that's what
far superior to what they are now. They're still good.
I remember when they had pizza
I
back in the day.
remember. I remember that you could
I
call
remember.
in and you could win a pizza, and my brother and I desperately wanted to win a pizza, and like just because it was on the commercials, and you had like it was like a 1-800 number,
Hmm.
and we watched a lot of TV, so we were trying to win.
Remember the play places? Are those still going to be a thing with
Oh
COVID?
man.
Oh
Oh, I
man.
hope so. I worked.
Hey,
I worked.
get your child backs before you hop onto the slide. Get your little
Yeah,
child
for
backs. There's a little child backs kit.
a little
That's gross.
vaccination kit on the way into McDonald's. There you go. Don't give the WHO ideas. But yeah, I love play places, man. They're wonderful. Okay, let's get into the last story for today. MPP Randy Hillier posts a photo of 15 people in one room over Christmas, celebrating Christmas.
Oh
How
my god.
dare he? The
The
horror.
horror. The horror. And of course this gets plenty of shame on social media. People are
Yeah.
like, how dare he? How dare he?
Yeah. How dare he indeed? And I mean, good for him. Like I had my family over too, and we did what we usually do. And I had people up in North Bay who didn't want to come down, and whatever. Like everybody's got to make their own choice. But having a global news article, look at the MP who didn't do what he's supposed to do, and it's just terrible.
And here's the thing, like if there was a major connection between a photo like this and like a death from COVID or even like a new case of COVID, the media would be all over it.
Yep.
And like there's been like next to none of those stories where it's like, oh look, somebody who went to this protest now is positive versus blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's not that many headlines about that, and probably because they can't really find any. I would assume they would play that up a lot if there was
Yep.
a story about that.
Yep.
But yeah,
It's tough. It's tough to get out from the long-term care homes.
And this is exactly my point, right? It's like, if people shame and shame and shame, and it's like, has there been a connection between like these big protests that are happening and like little gatherings like this and like connecting it to an actual COVID death? Like, no, because the deaths are mostly happening in the long-term care homes. So these people who just kind of mindlessly shame people, it's like, you can't even really tell me why. It's I don't know.
Yeah, they're just trying to shame him. They're using this to further drive the same wedge. It's the same wedge. It's the same stuff we've been talking about the whole show. Really, I lied about it being the last tab though. We've got one more after this.
But I do want to say,
yeah,
you know what's nice about that photo?
Right.
No masks on anybody.
It is nice.
There's just nice. Like the degree of normalcy that I like to see there.
Yep. Yeah. Nobody virtue signaling. Nobody looking to make political points or anything like that. We really need to get back to good governance and stop the insanity. We really need to stop the insanity. Like,
Speaking
like toboggan experts. CTV says experts say tobogganing during the pandemic is totally safe. I got my PhD in tobogganing and a minor in alpine skiing. I've made that joke too much. I don't care. It's hilarious.
I know all about germ physics when it comes to tobogganing and -2 degrees Celsius weather.
Perfect.
That's what I know specifically about. So thank you for interviewing me, CTV.
I think the fact, so the tweet says experts say tobogganing is totally safe. Totally safe. If I'm Chicopee, I'm putting that up on my window, on my board, and I'm opening up the tubing hill. Like, come on, kids, let's go tobogganing. Like, $5 a pop. Let's go. Totally safe. Experts say. Doug Ford.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like an asshole or anything, but I'm just picturing, like, normie parents foaming, drooling at the mouth, saying, "Oh, the experts said that tobogganing's safe. Isn't that great?" Like, okay, it's safe at Walmart, safe at Costco, safe to toboggan. It's like, no, I can't go to the local business. No.
Can't go to church.
It's a smaller location.
Yeah. You can't go. The church doesn't have high enough ceilings. All the COVID's pushed down.
Yeah.
Come on. It's terrible. It's terrible what they're doing. They're lying. Tobogganing experts, I was joking about my PhD. I don't have a PhD in tobogganing.
I mean, even for the person who wrote this article, I can't, like, Maggie Parkhill, like, did you write this headline and think,
nailed it?
Yeah, nailed it. It's just so, like, this is like a perfect Not the Onion. I don't know if you've heard of Not the Onion.
But I like Babylon Bee. I like Babylon Bee better.
Right.
But I will check
it
out.
Of course.
Oh, Not the Onion. Yeah, on Reddit, right?
Yeah.
Back in
the day when I used to go on Reddit, there was a subreddit called Not the Onion where I would take real headlines that would sound like joke headlines. This is close to that, I would say.
I agree entirely. All right, I think that does it. What do you think?
I'm gonna go enjoy some fresh air, get some vitamin D, because apparently I heard 90% of the people who get COVID are vitamin D deficient.
There you go. It's a good idea to get out and get some sun. I heard that it's totally safe to go tobogganing. Experts say.
God. Have a happy New Year, everybody.
Indeed. Yes, a very happy New Year, and thanks for joining us today. Greg, where can people check you out if they want to have a look at your stuff?
You can check out my YouTube channel, Greg Wycliffe, or you can follow me on Twitter at GDub with 2 Ds, GDDUB.
Nice. And me, you can check out on CanadaPoly.com and CanadaReport.co. That's my scratch pad. I'm working on random things every day, so check things out there. And we'll have the Prime Minister play us out. Thanks for checking us out, everyone, and have a wonderful New Year. Don't be too crazy. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. And have a wonderful, wonderful day. Here's the Prime Minister.
Speaking moistly. Keep 2 meters apart. Speaking moistly.